everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady.
And I'm Aiden the Gardener.
Hey, I'm Savannah, Bree's intern.
And today we are making a video to feature 5 of our favorite plants for the month of June. We're a bit behind schedule. I did not realize that today was the last day of the month. I really need for it to be June 1st. I need a June do-over. But having already done what we've done, you know. But we wanted to walk around the garden and feature 5 plants that are really looking outstanding for kind of this late June, early July time of year here in Zone 7, Central North Carolina. All right, so our first choice is garden phlox. And this is Phlox paniculata Bright Eyes. And it's a spreader, you guys. I'm gonna warn you, like, it always takes me off guard about how much square footage it will take on. This is a great native plant to North America. And it's a pollinator magnet. Right now, there's just lots of different species of bees visiting, but hopefully soon we will have a whole flock of monarchs and swallowtails visiting, gathering nectar from this awesome perennial. Now, while we're talking about phlox, here's another variety whose name I've unfortunately lost. But you can see it's quite different in that it's much shorter, more compact. You see the internodes are really short, and it has this, you know, brilliant large flowers. And we do have pollinator activity on it. So, you know, there's no lack of bee activity. But this is representative of some of the modern breeding that's being done on the genera Phlox paniculata. So taking the native plant, which is tall and spreading, and basically breeding it to be more compact and kind of just a better specimen for a garden, because this is much easier to maintain. But 2 completely different types of phlox. Both prefer, you know, more sun than shade, sort of moist, evenly moist, well-drained soil, like every plant. That's such a generic thing to say about soil, but it's true. But a newer variety, bred to be compact, likely to be more or less mildew resistant. We haven't really gotten into mildew season yet. That usually happens more in like late August. Whereas Bright Eyes does get mildew. I really think you just can't go wrong in general growing Phlox paniculatas, regardless of whether it's an old-fashioned variety or a new one. They're all worth growing. So our next choice is another perennial, maybe potentially a little bit invasive, just letting everybody know. I actually, oddly enough, I didn't plant either this lilium or this Phlox paniculata. They came in on the roots of the crinum, which are planted in here that you can't even see because they've been completely overrun. You see, there's the crinum. And they hardly ever bloom because, of course, this has gotten too shady. But Aiden was like, ooh, the lilies are blooming. And this is Lilium lanceolatum. It's an Asian species, also called tiger lily. And you can see here, these are really arching out of the bed, reaching for the sun, because this has gotten quite shady over the years. It's an interesting plant in the sense that it's like determined to grow. So you see all these little black things at the leaf nodes. Those are called bulbils, and they will root. And this is actually in part its mechanization for mass spreading. Now, it's a great cut flower. They actually will last a pretty long time. However, the anthers have the capacity to stain your clothing and your skin if you rub up against it, especially if you're sweating. So when you are using it as a cut flower, it's recommended that you actually just come in and just with a pair of scissors, cut off all the sexual parts. That way, when you bring it inside, you won't risk, you know, making a mess wherever you place your flowers. But again, another great plant. Obviously here it's growing in part shade. It does prefer full sun, again, moist, well-draining soil. But this is a tough as nails plant. If you struggle growing other lilies, you'll probably have success with this one. So our next top pick has to be coneflower or Echinacea. This is Echinacea purpurea, straight species. Actually got these as plugs from North Creek Nurseries. And it's really great because it's a seed grown strain and they tend to abundantly set seed, and they've really here just kind of made a great colony in this corner. I've been amazed at how well they do in part shade conditions. Again, because the trees have grown a lot. This was full sun 10 years ago, and now it's definitely part shade. Now planted at the base of it is a newer cultivated selection, and so you can really see the difference. So Savannah stands there, you see the new variety isn't even knee high, right? And the straight seed grown species is like waist high. So you're looking at these from more the perspective of where you're going to plant them to determine what kind you should grow. I think there's always more pollinator activity on these seed grown varieties. You can see there's bees and stuff floating around. There are some pollinators here on this, which I think this is in the sombrero series, but nowhere near as much activity. But again, you're just looking at kind of where are you putting it, how tall of the space can, if your space can handle something taller, go ahead and do the straight species. If you're looking for planting it right at the front of the border, one of these newer varieties that's been bred to be much shorter is probably your better pick. So another example of a cultivated variety, this is in the sombrero series Baja Burgundy. And you see, this has been blooming for months and it looks awesome. It's nice and compact. It's a little bit taller than the one that we just showed you. And I'd say this is probably my favorite in the series. And it just keeps on putting out new flowers. And of course, the new flowers have the most amount of nectar, so that's where you're gonna find the most number of pollinators. And another newer hybrid variety is this one called Pretty Parasols. And what I really love about it is how it kind of emerges green or white, and then over time, the flowers actually get this kind of pink hue to it. And again, this has been blooming really probably since the middle to beginning of May. And this is its third year in the ground and it's getting bigger. I like that this is a little taller. You know, I just don't think that every plant needs to be dwarf. It makes for an uninteresting garden. You need plants of lots of different heights. And I like how Pretty Parasols kind of fills in this nice, you know, medium-sized height, maybe 2.5 foot tall. It's also a great cut flower. Our fourth top pick has to be the Sun-credible sunflowers. Because we just planted these, 2 weeks ago. They have not stopped blooming. We've had a little bit of rain, so they're finally starting to get established on their own. It's been really nice not having to run sprinklers for the last few days. And there's a lot of pollinator activity. Smaller insects, tiny bees. It's always fun to walk around a garden and investigate which creatures are visiting what. Now, of course, we mixed a lot of large flowering traditional sunflowers into this bed, but it's going to be a while before they really grow up and start flowering. So really, these from Proven Winners are the primary interest in this bed. I can't wait to see what this looks like a month from now.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be a dramatic transformation. All right, our top pick for June and early July has to be the one and only Coleus. Honestly, if you are gardening without Coleus, you aren't living a complete life. Am I right?
She's right. Yeah.
So let's turn the camera around and show them some of our favorite varieties. So here at the live wall, we have several different varieties. And actually on this side, it's Coleus, the top 4 rows, and then a close relative, Plectranthus, down at the bottom. And what do you think? Do you have a favorite in the wall?
I love the yellow.
I love the pink.
It's really hard to pick.
Yeah.
I agree. And we're getting to the time where probably by next week, we're going to start actually cutting these, and we will use them in arrangements inside, and they will root, and we can plant them in more parts of the garden. So we're basically propagating them just by rooting them in water. Not all plants do that, but Coleus are very reliable. And yeah, I find it impossible to pick a favorite, but we'll show them some of the other varieties we have growing. This is a pretty one here in this pot, kind of pink and burgundy. I lose track of their names. I'm not great at, a lot of these plants, they're like new and improved, but they look the same as old varieties, and it's like I don't have the brain space to keep up with all of them. I also really like this ruffly one. The nice thing with the newer varieties, and particularly the ones coming from Proven Winners, which are out of Dr. Dave Clark's breeding program at University of Florida, they are less likely to flower. So, these are vegetatively produced, meaning asexually propagated from either cutting or tissue culture. Unlike the seed-grown ones that are just constantly flowering and setting seed, you end up getting a lot more foliage interest with these ones that aren't constantly bolting and putting out blooms. So here's some more varieties, but you see right here when I'm talking about varieties that are gonna fight you and constantly try to flower, you just pluck that off, and that will allow the plant to, expand and grow more vegetatively. I prefer varieties that don't do this early in the season. This is a day length trigger, but really, ideally, they won't start flowering until more like late August, September. So some varieties are more likely to bloom than others. Without question, the most dramatic Coleus display in the garden this year are these El Bridos, another variety from Dr. Dave Clark through Proven Winners. We got these at Johnson Nursery down in Willard, and Savannah planted these. They were monsters, like 2 gallon, and they're finally established. The first couple of weeks of getting them in the ground, they wilted every day. They were really dramatic. But I think they're finally rooting into the ground that they're growing in, and so they're not flagging just because it's hot out. You really can't beat this for color and interest. I mean, does anything say summer more than a brightly colored Coleus? And of course, this collection of containers, really, they look so interesting because of the Coleus. We've got lots of things incorporated, like jalapeno peppers and tomatoes that the deer nibble on. But the Coleus are really what's providing the color. And that's a great thing about foliage plants, is that you don't have to depend on them to bloom to get the incredible level of interest. Well, everybody, I hope this video featuring 5 of our favorite plants will inspire you to grow a few.
Be sure to follow Bree the Plant Lady and subscribe, and follow Bree the Cat Lady on TikTok.
Our brand new account.
Thank you for watching.
Happy planting, everybody.